So when you're writing HTML, it can kind of be time consuming to write everything out by hand. So instead of doing that, I like to use this tool called Emmet that basically makes writing HTML much faster and quicker. It basically gives you a bunch of shorthand that you can expand into actual HTML and speed up your development time by a lot. So I'm using VS Code right now, which actually has Emmet installed by default. So you don't actually need to do anything out of the box with VS Code. But if you're using a different editor, then you want to just go to emmet.io, and they have downloads for pretty much every single IDE that you could ever use. So download it if you need to, but for VS Code it just comes out of the box. Alright, so first thing you need to do with a new HTML document is set up the basic template with HTML, head, body. Now I could type all that out by hand, but that would take a long time. So what you can do with Emmet is, for Emmet, you type out the shorthand for it, and then you press tab. So to get started with a new document, I'm going to just push exclamation point and tab. And we already have this nice little HTML template right here. So it also gives us some useful stuff like these meta tags, so characters display properly, and this for responsive design, so it looks good on mobile phones, things like that. So that's a lot better than trying to remember it by myself or copy and pasting it from some website. I can just type exclamation point and then tab. So inside this, you can create tags by typing out the name of the tag. Let's say I want to create a div, and then you just push tab and you have a div right there. You can do that with any kind of tag. So let's say I want to make an article, a header, a footer, unordered list, a list, and then I can just type inside all of those. And another nice thing about Emmet is it places your cursor exactly where you need it. So let's say I make a div, I push tab, and then it automatically puts my cursor inside of this div tag. So I can just start typing something. And besides that, it also has some other fields filled out for you. Like if you type in A, like an anchor tag, and push, then you're never really going to use an anchor tag without an href. So it automatically fills that in for you. Same with something like image. It'll add the source and alt for you, add those attributes for you, like if you put in an input. And the nice thing about VS Code is you can go up and down with this and see like all the possible values that you could put in here. So that's useful. And sometimes it can save you a lot of time. Like if you want to make an external link and you want to make it open in a new tab or something, then you can push A:\blank and it fills all that out for you. So it adds this for security purposes, and it just makes that a lot easier. Now Emmet is kind of smart, and it places your cursor kind of where it thinks you'll need it. So whenever we make a new A tag, it thinks like, okay, we need to fill in the href first. So let's say https google.com, and then it also knows that we need to put text in here as well. So I don't know if you can see this, but it has a little gray line right here. And in order to go to that, I just push tab, and it automatically takes me there. So basically, I push A, tab, fill in the href, tab, and then fill in the text. So it makes it super simple to do that. And besides that, Emmet is kind of all about writing as few characters as possible. So some of these tags even have abbreviations, like instead of writing button, I can type in BTN. There we go. Instead of header, I can type HDR. Instead of footer, I can put in FTR, and things like that. Yeah, VS Code is nice because you get this whole list right here, so you can kind of discover new shortcuts. And besides that, what you can do is you can add classes and IDEs very easily. So let's see, I want to make a div with the class of container. So I'd put div.container. This dot, it's kind of like CSS selectors. So if you know CSS, you're basically just putting in a class of container. And then you tab, and then it automatically fills that out for you. You can add as many classes as you want. So container say columns, whatever, and it makes all those classes for you. You can do the same with ID. Let's say we want to make this ID main, and you can also add in as many classes as you want to. So let's say div with the ID main and class container, and it automatically fills that out for us. So that saves a lot of time when you're typing things out. But besides that, you can also put in children. So let's say I want to make a div and then use the angle bracket to give it children. Let's say inside this div, I want to have a header, and then inside this header, I want to have a div with the class subheading, and then I push tab, and it fills all that out for me. So all these are nested inside of this, headers inside the div, divs inside the header. So that makes it really easy to kind of fill in the layouts really quickly. Besides that, you can also do siblings. So let's say I wanted to have this div, let's say an article. Inside this article, I want to have a header. And then for siblings, you push plus. So it's just going to put this adjacent, like right below it. So when I have a header, main, and then below that a footer. And then you tab, and we now have all these right in a row. And you can also tab through these, so I can put something in here, and then the cursor is down here. You see this little gray bar, so I can tab something else here, another thing here, and that makes it really easy. So I can also use the caret to climb up one level. So if I want to have a div here, and let's say a header inside here, and then a subheading inside here. Okay, now I can go up one level. Right now I'm inside the header, but I want to be inside this main div right here because I want to add more to it. So you use the caret to climb up, and then I can add a footer in here as well. So now we have the header with the subheading inside that, and then the footer adjacent to the heading. Now, if you don't want to go through and like manually add the text in here afterwards, then what you can do is you can type in the text with curly brackets. So let's say I want a div with the text of hello world. So you just use this curly bracket syntax around the text, tab, and now it's inside the div. If you want to add custom attributes, like something different than a class or an ID, what you can do is, let's say we're making an input, and I want the type to be text, and I want the name to be, let's say, username. Push tab, and now I have an input with these custom values in there. So that's how you do it with these square brackets. And one other really useful thing you can do with Emmet is multiplication. So let's say I want to have an unordered list here with, let's say, 10 children. I don't want to manually type all those out, so I can use the star to multiply. So I'd type in li star 10, push tab, and now we have 10 list items right here. And you can give all these a class of something, list item, tab, or that didn't work. I think it's like this. So I can give them all the class list item. Yeah, that's correct. Okay, so classes have to be after the multiplier. Okay, so these all have list items. So that's a really useful way to get a whole bunch of data in there quickly. And another thing you can do with multiplication is, let's say we want to number each of them. Like, I don't want them all to be the same class. So let's say list times 10, but then I want to give them each an ID of which number they are. So let's say ID list item, and then I want to have the number here, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I'm going to put a $sign in here. And then I'm going to push tab, and now each of these have their respective number. And you can do that with other things as well. Like if I want to add in the text as well, I can say number and then $sign, tab that out, and now I have the ID with the correct number and the text with the correct number. So that comes in handy. You can also group commands together. So let me give an example with div. And let's say inside this div, we want to have one little group right here with header. Inside that, div with a subheading. And inside that, I want to have an h1. And then I kind of want that all to be its own little group. So just have this as one part, and then I can add a sibling as a footer and also a main. So when I push tab on that here, sometimes you have to type it in, like type the last letter again to make it detect it. So I'm going to push tab on that, and then we have inside this header everything in its little group, and then we also have the main and the footer down here outside of the group. So that's useful if you want to make some more sophisticated layouts. But honestly, I don't really use it to like do the whole page. Like I've seen some Emmet commands where it's just like lines and lines of text, and they push tab and the whole page magically appears. I don't really do it like that. I kind of just use more of these basic commands, div, div, div inside here, and kind of like finish this section first, then finish the next section after that. So I don't do the whole page at one time. And finally, the last thing you can do is, instead of just typing in div every time, div is kind of like the default tag in HTML. Like you're going to be using it a lot. So instead of just typing in div.class for something, you can just type in .container. And Emmet is smart enough to know that, okay, he probably means a div because that's what's most commonly used. So I'm just going to autofill it as a div. So that's called implicit tag names. So it's kind of assuming what you want. And that's not only for divs. Like if you're making an unordered list and you want to have list items inside, well, you're not going to put a div inside of a UL. So Emmet kind of knows what you're expecting. So instead of putting in li, I'm just going to put in list item, and it knows it's going to be an li, so it just turns it into a li. So if you want to see more of these commands, there's a big cheat sheet right here at docs.emmet.io/cheat-sheet, and this basically has everything you could possibly need. So I tried to go over everything that you're going to be using on a regular basis, but this just has every possible thing that you could ever use, every possible abbreviation that you could expand. So if you want to get really good at Emmet, you can go to this page and look for anything that you could use. And there's also these commands for CSS as well. I didn't really go over that. Maybe I'll do it in another video. But yeah, you can just read this if you want to see everything that Emmet can do. Okay, so one more thing. If you're writing React, then Emmet doesn't actually work by default. So let's say you're writing some React and you want to put some HTML inside your JavaScript. By default, Emmet is not going to recognize it because you're in a JavaScript file instead of an HTML file. So I got it working, but you have to change one thing in the settings to make it work. So I'm going to open up my settings with Control, comma, and then I'm going to go here to the side, extensions, Emmet, and you want to edit it in settings.json. And down here at the bottom, you just want to include this right here, Emmet.include languages, and then put JavaScript and JavaScript React. And once you save that, then you'll be able to use Emmet as normal inside your JSX. So that's just a little helpful tip if you happen to be writing React. All right, and that's basically it with Emmet. So if you like the video, leave it a like, subscribe, all that jazz. All right, that's all for now.